Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new episode of Liam's First Look. This week on the show, we're going over UFC 306, UFC Noche, UFC at the Sphere, whatever you want to call it. We're talking about it today. And of course, we got Sugar Sean O'Malley. He's taking on Merab, the Machine, Dvalishvili, and it's going down at 135 pounds. The title is on the line, but we also have another title fight. It is the trilogy, the final chapter of Alexa Grasso and Valentina Bullet Shevchenko. I'm excited to see this one play out. If you guys have been sticking around the show for a long time, then you know when it was plus 660 on Alexa Grasso, we were there. We lived to tell the tale. We got the cash. And nowadays, we're looking at Alexa Grasso favored to win in this trilogy bout. So I'm excited to discuss it all with you. We've got a great card from top to bottom. It's only a 10-fight card, but I think that overall we got some fun action fights to discuss. I think the UFC did a good job matchmaking a lot of their Mexican talent to give them a chance to go out there and potentially put on some fun performances. But if you guys are new here, what I want to do off the top is I want to let you know, number one, I'm going to do more research over the course of the week. So make sure that you hit that subscribe button and come back when we're talking about this later on in the week, when we're talking a little bit more about the granular betting information as all the odds get released market wide. Only some of these fights have the props, for example, released at this point. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about every fight on the card. I'm going to give you my first impressions. I'm going to talk about my thoughts on each fighter, and we're going to try and give a little bit of an early preview and prediction. But like I said, I'm going to do more tape study, more research, and I'm going to give them even more ironed out product, as well as have a great sharp guest on with me to talk about it all for bets and banter. So make sure you stay tuned for that later on in the week. But as far as we're doing today, guys, we start with the main event always on the first look, and we've got a great one this week. I'm really excited about this fight. Frankly, I've got two guys on opposite ends of the equation, right? On one side of this, I've done very well with picking, capping Merab Dvalishvili fights over the course of his career. I think the reason being, I have a little bit of a soft spot in my heart for Merab. He's a guy that's very hardworking. He's a guy that's got a wrestling heavy style. And there's no great sophistication in what he does in a lot of ways. He goes forward, he pressures, he's got a lot of heart, a lot of grit. He grabs a hold of people, throws them to the ground, keeps them working until they get tired. It's a very workman-like approach to mixed martial arts. And there's a lot, I think, that you can respect about Merab Dvalishvili. On the other side of things, Sugar Sean O'Malley is a great fighter, but I haven't had a great time capping his fights, right? I've always, thought to myself that he's a good fighter, but I've had my doubts, my skepticism at times along the way in terms of, is this going to be the challenge that he runs up against where things go sideways? And last time out against Marlon Chito Vera, he couldn't have done a much better job in terms of closing the book on that one. I don't know that anybody's asking for a trilogy of that bout. It was a soft massacre, in that last fight. Damaged his face, great knees up the middle, great shots with the boxing, picked his spots well, fought well for the full 25 minutes. So he did show a lot of the things that you'd like to see from a fighter that, you have question marks about. But there's a whole different side of mixed martial arts, right? And we always talk about, you have a striking energy system where you're out there, trying to kickbox for 25 minutes. There are guys in the UFC that can kickbox for an hour, but if you try and make them wrestle for 5 minutes, they're exhausted. Right. And that's because it's just a different style of energy. It's a different way, of moving out there. So I think that for both of these guys, they're very different in terms of how they approach it. Merab is a lot less efficient with his energy. He doesn't try to be because he's got a ton of it. Right. So the guy is out there doing things that most people would not encourage. Right. Your coach will not encourage you to go pick somebody up and slam them full impact as many times as you can because it's exhausting. Right? For the most part, when you try and lift somebody and return them, the average human being, they do that once, twice, 3 times, 5 times. They start to get really physically exhausted, and then they're a lesser version of themselves moving forward. For a guy like Merab, so far in his career, he's done a great job of just keeping that, ticker moving forward. Now, have there been times in the past where that wasn't always the case? Yeah, you've definitely seen examples where he, had a difficult third round against a Ricky Simone. Right? You look back at that fight and there's a great controversy about that, how that fight ended. I'd like to do a deep dive one day on that fight in particular, because when you look back, there was definitely some moments where it looks like Merab might be out. It looks like he's in danger, but then he's showing the thumbs up sign and as soon as Ricky Simone points to him and says he's out, he like verbally accosts him and says, I'm not out, goes to sit up. Then you have officials from the athletic commission like holding him down with two shoulders on the mat. And then they're saying that he's out and he can't stand up. I was just like, it's an unbelievable sequence of events. I think he went out and came back. I think he slammed himself on his head, maybe knocked himself unconscious, woke back up in a choke, and then was able to deal with that. But in any case, right, I think there's an argument for both sides. So you see that there's been cases in the past where he's dealt with that adversity, no doubt about it. But he's also developed a lot of experience. He's fought a very brutal strength of schedule throughout his UFC career. And people give him grief for the Marlon Moraes and the Henry Cejudo looks. But, those are two guys that fought for the bantamweight title. Those are two guys that are championship level fighters. And maybe he caught him at the right time. He caught him a little bit on a downswing. But I certainly think that those are really credible wins. And it does show you that Merab isn't like a lot of guys that get hit and they fold up the tent, right? He's a guy that's willing to get hit and then drag you to hell with him. And the thing that I did think was smart about Merab in some of those fights was that he showed a willingness for self-preservation. A lot of guys based on ego will continue to just stand there and swing in the pocket. What Merab did, some people label as cowardice, right? He sprints away from the guy, then turns to face him, starts to throw punches to get his opponent to throw back, and then uses that to enter in on the clinch. Even in a state of like, whatever you want to call it, being rocked, being wobbled while he's not fully conscious. My man is like on Dream Street and still found a way to grab a hold of the clinch in a really smart way, put the guy back into a takedown sequence, and honestly broke his will in that moment. So I think that you've seen a lot of really good adaptations from Merab. The other thing I'll note is Petr Yan was injured, so it seemed, in the fight with Merab. So I struggle to know exactly how much to put into that performance. However, going into that performance, I remember what everybody told me. They said there's no chance that Merab beats Petr Yan. They're like, Petr Yan is going to go out there and whoop his ass. He's too good in the feet. He's too good in the wrestling. He's not getting taken down by him. And then Merab just showed that when you never stop your offense, it's very hard for somebody to get into the fight. There's a lot of simple stuff that he was doing, throwing the low kicks, getting after, his takedown attempts, even when they weren't there, just forcing Yan to defend constantly. That puts you in a state of fatigue for most fighters. And again, we've seen Merab just have this extra layer of cardio, this ability, this willingness to push through. When other people start to get fatigued and tired, he starts to just turn up the energy and turn up the pace a little bit on them. So I wondered to myself, a guy like O'Malley, a guy who has had some dicey moments late in his fights in round threes as well. He's had some problems, I'd say, not with durability to head strikes or anything like that, but just a little bit of difficulty staying healthy, whether that's in fights against Chito Vera, whether that's in the lead up to fights. He basically said, I couldn't wrestle before the Aljamain Sterling fight because I was dealing with so many injuries in camp. He just seems like a guy, we know he's dealt with injuries in the Sukumtat fight and these other fights. And you have to just wonder, could that ever rear its head, especially against a guy who's going to try and push that pace for 25 minutes? 25 minutes is a long time to be out there. Cage fighting is a dangerous thing. So I think that you have a sniper, right, on one hand in Merab Dvalishvili against just like a billy club in Merab, right? So like certainly you think the guy who's more dangerous in this fight is Sean O'Malley. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the challenger and some of the things that make him special. We'll talk a little bit about the champion, and then we're going to circle back to the chat and all the sharp things that you guys have to add. Sharpest chat in the game, already assembled. 115 people rocking with us live between Twitter as well as YouTube. If you're following on one and not following on the other, go make sure that you subscribe on YouTube. Make sure that you follow over on X at Liam Picks Fights. Talking a lot about mixed martial arts. I keep it straightforward about combat sports, about gambling, things that you will enjoy. So in terms of what I'm looking at here, right, I'm looking at a fight where a guy in Sugar Sean O'Malley, he's continued to show, I got to get you out of the chat, Jeremiah. You're just being really annoying, brother. How do I ban you from the chat? That's a good question. Okay. In any case, you just got to chill, my man. We're not jumping right to the pick. We're going to talk about the fight and then we'll get into it. It's just spamming the chat is not cool. So in any case, right, you've got a guy in Sugar Sean O'Malley. What has he done well? He stacked together a lot of really impressive performances, many of them on the feet, but he's also shown off an ability on the ground, right? So we've seen a guy go out there in Sugar Sean O'Malley, and he's picked apart, the likes of Marlon Chito Vera, Aljamain Sterling. That was a really impressive performance. Do I think that was the best version of Aljo? I'm going to be frank. No, it was a really bad version of Aljo in a number of ways. I don't think Aljo was confident going into that fight. I think Aljo, was set up to fail, right? You talk about the environment. Sometimes people can block that out. I don't think Aljo could, right? I think Aljo was feeling the pressure. I think Aljo was feeling the fact that nobody there wanted him to win. Not Dana White, not the people in Boston, not Sugar Sean O'Malley. Like, nobody wanted to see him do well, right? And so Sean even said in interviews this week, he was like, I felt bad for Aljo, man. Like, I felt some sympathy for him because everybody wanted to see him fail. Everybody was booing him. It was that kind of environment. So yeah, when everybody wants to see you fail, sometimes you live up to their expectations. And I do think that's a little bit of what we got from Aljamain Sterling. He accepted a quick turnaround. He got baited into it. Hunter Campbell, man, this guy, he's the next Dana White, except a little bit slicker, right? He'll just tell you, think about the opportunity, Aljo, to take all of his fans, and he weaseled his way in there. Like, you don't want people to think he's better than you, to find a way to get under his skin. And I think that this guy, Sean O'Malley, is a very good fighter. I think that people have to give him the credit and respect and not say, the things that they've said in the rest of his career where, this guy isn't real. He's not good. He's not talented. He's not he's being pushed by the UFC. He's being fronted by the UFC. I even think the Petr Yan fight, on the night, I thought it was a robbery, right? I felt like a lot of the community, I was like, man, I didn't see that. On rewatch, it's a close fight. It's a very close fight. Sean O'Malley did a lot of damage in that fight. He took a lot of damage in that fight. He showed some heart and toughness there. That's why I say it's not like a head strike durability is his problem. He got hit with a massive punch by Petr Yan. He kept it pushing. He kept moving. He kept fighting. So I think that you see Sugar Sean O'Malley has some heart. He's got some toughness. He's got some willingness to stay in there. But there's a whole different ballgame between getting hit and getting hurt and getting tired. There's a lot of guys that can take a punch to the face, but then when they start to get really tired, they just have nothing left to give. They start to fall over. Even think of the Kimbo Slice Dada 5000 fight, right? When you talk about cardio, Kimbo Slice wasn't even landing strikes. He got a TKO via this man falling over face down, due to a lack of energy stores, right? He had nothing left to give. And I think that for Sean O'Malley, he's a good athlete. He's a guy that's going to come in well-conditioned. But if he's forced to be in a very defensive posture, if he's forced to be taken down a number of times, work his way back up to his feet, spend all the energy and the time getting back up, only to get lifted and returned again, or to get put back into the takedown sequence, back into that rinse and repeat cycle, that does become a question for me. How does that pan out? Because we saw a guy like Petr Yan, who's not as good of a wrestler, and it's not as default a setting for him as a guy like Merab Dvalishvili, go out there and take him down several times. He had a couple of explosive high amplitude takedowns. And I mentioned Sean O'Malley showed great awareness. He showed great adaptability. He used his switches from the bottom position. He used his length and his ability to be very dexterous to get back up to his feet. But I just don't know that Petr Yan either intended to, had the game plan to try and attempt more takedowns than he did, right? I think he wanted to mix it in, but I think he expected to have more success on the feet. He was getting humbled a little bit by O'Malley, who was out there landing his own good shots and getting to him on the feet. He said, you know what? I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to use my well-rounded MMA skills, and I'm going to take him down. And I think he even encountered a little bit more resistance in the wrestling than he was expecting. I think that Merab knows what he's dealing with, in terms of he's expecting a talented guy. He's expecting a guy who's got laser-like strikes, who's going to try and snipe him, who's got an insane striking differential on the feet. This guy's stats are legendary. I'm going to pull up UFC stats real quick because when you talk about these guys, they both have like all-time type of stats in the bantamweight division and in the UFC, but in different categories. And we'll talk about each of them. I'm going to share this on my screen so you guys can get a feel for what we're talking about. But looking at UFC stats, okay, Sugar Sean O'Malley, guys, this striking differential is sickening. Okay, 7.6 strikes landed per minute, significant strikes landed per minute compared to just 3.5 on the return for his opponents. That is world class. That is some of the best striking differential that you will see in the UFC, especially at a high level. You do want to take into account, he didn't always fight the highest level of opposition in the UFC, but with a sample size that includes Marlon Chito Vera, Aljamain Sterling, Petr Yan, Pedro Munoz, although that was a fight that was ended prematurely, Raulian Paiva, Chris Mutino, Thomas Almeida, Marlon Vera again, Eddie Wineland, Jose Quinones, Andre Sukumtath, Terrion Ware, Alfred Kasakian. That's not a bad run. It's not a, elite all-time, best ever run. It's certainly not that. But it's not a bad list of fighters. It's not a bunch of slouches. It's a bunch of guys typically that can strike, and he did go out there and tune most of them up like an old guitar. So for me, the question becomes, how does this fight play out, right? If it's a fight that plays out at distance, we kind of know that the better distance striker, by the numbers, by the metrics, right, in terms of the length, the ability to fight out of both stances, the ability to target all areas of the body, you just have to think that's going to be a Sean O'Malley fight. That's the kind of fight that Sean O'Malley is built to win against most guys in this bantamweight division. Like, who is going to go out there and take on Sean O'Malley in a pure striking fight right now in the UFC at 135 and have a lot of success? I think that's an open question. I don't think that the guy would be Merab necessarily, right? Merab's just not a guy that does that at a very high level. He's been in dangerous positions before on the feet with lesser opponents on the feet than O'Malley in terms of both stats, knockdowns, things like this. So the other thing to take into account with a guy like O'Malley, we're talking about a UFC bantamweight, okay? And he recorded a knockdown against Aljamain Sterling. He recorded a knockdown against Raulian Paiva, a knockdown against Chris Mutino, 2 knockdowns against Thomas Almeida, and then sent him through the floor with a ground and pound follow-up, a knockdown against Eddie Wineland, and 2 knockdowns against Alfred Kasakian. So the guy has clear knockdown power that you have to reckon with. If you are out in front of this guy at distance, you could definitely get busted up, right? Like, you could definitely get hurt, knocked down, dropped, hit very hard. I mean, Chito Vera didn't get knocked down, but he did everything but. And over a 5-round fight, 230 significant strikes landed is just absolutely remarkable. So you got to give a lot of credit and respect to what O'Malley has been able to accomplish. But now let's take a look at the other side, guys, because Merab Dvalishvili is averaging 6.43 takedowns per 15 minutes. I mean, that's just an absurd amount. And a lot of guys, the reason they struggle in terms of implementing the wrestling and the takedowns as a game plan is they want to hold on too bad, right? And what I mean by that is, if I'm holding on to you constantly, I've got my Gable grip, I'm grabbing on whatever it is, any kind of grip sequencing that you want. Eventually, when I start doing that S grip, anything you want to do, you're going to start getting tired of holding on to somebody. It's going to start to fill your muscles with lactic acid. It's going to be, instead of a question about cardio, it starts to become a question about muscular endurance. And it becomes very hard to be strong as well as great muscular endurance, and also be able to do it over and over and then start, stop. It becomes very difficult to manage all these energy systems. And I think that for Merab, part of the advantage is he's not trying to hold control time for as much as these other guys are, right? He's not as desperate to be on top of you at all times. He just wants to continue wrestling-based sequences and force you to defend, whether he's getting you down or not, whether he's getting you into the really suboptimal positions or not. Because the more he's able to do that, the more he's able to make you fatigued, to take away your danger factor, and to make it a question about who wants it better and who can push more when we're tired, and these kind of things, where then it's intangibles, right? Then the machine has a good chance, right? If it's about who's got prettier techniques and who could throw better hooks and combinations, like, that's a fight that O'Malley is going to run away with. But if it's a fight about who's more of a dog in wrestling sequences and who wants to get on top more and who's going to force the issue when they both start to get tired, that is a question I think that becomes a lot more of an open question. Here's the other thing we have to consider, guys, because this guy, Merab Dvalishvili, I looked at this earlier. It's remarkable, okay? Against every fighter he's ever fought in the UFC that is not named Jose Aldo Jr., he has gotten at least 2 or more takedowns. I will repeat. Against every fighter not named Jose Aldo Jr., who's got elite all-time takedown defense, he's recorded at least 2 or more takedowns. Let's go fight by fight. Henry Cejudo, guys, 5 takedowns to 1 for the machine, Merab Dvalishvili. That's a Olympian, certainly a little bit past his prime, but something that we've got to take into consideration. Merab Dvalishvili and Petr Yan. Guys, 11 takedowns to 1, and Petr Yan out-wrestled Sugar Sean. So you just got to give a little bit of credit and respect. I think the injury is something to keep in our, back of our mind. but certainly 11 takedowns to 1, and he attempted 47 of them. The guy is willing to go all day and just keep throwing takedown attempt in volume. Then you look at the Jose Aldo fight, 0 takedowns, but he still managed. If you go and look at this fight, 5 minutes of control time on 16 takedown attempts. So a lot of cage pushing, a lot of control in that fight against Aldo, and almost got to 60 significant strikes, 57 compared to just 38 for Aldo. So he didn't get off on that much volume, but he limited the output of his opponent, and he just became a defensive blanket, right? And really stuffed Jose Aldo from doing anything. Then you look at the Marlon Moraes fight, and Moraes landed the big shots. He got him early. He hurt him bad. He's got that sick left hook, and the left hook is typically where Merab Dvalishvili struggles. So, Sean O'Malley is probably working on his switch stance left hook in this one. But when you're looking at how Moraes got to him, as well as how Cejudo got to him on the feet, that left hook was the prime culprit. And you're looking at a guy, in Merab Dvalishvili who rallied from that and just got a hold of this guy, put him through the wrestling paces, and then beat the absolute tar out of him. A workman-like performance. But again, it's when he gets you to the ground in these positions, he starts to apply his pressure with the strikes as well. You see the striking totals in these fights: 74 over 3 rounds against Cejudo, 147 over 5 rounds against Jan, 57 over 3 rounds against Aldo, 69 over 2 rounds against Marlon Moraes. So the guy can go out there and land, commensurate volume when he's able to get the takedowns working. Then you look at Cody Stamann, a very talented wrestler. 5 takedowns for Merab Dvalishvili to just 1 for Stamann. 2 takedowns against John Dodson to 0 for John Dodson. 13 takedowns against Gustavo Lopes. 12 takedowns against Casey Kenny. Should have whooped his ass even worse. God bless you for it, Merab. 5 takedowns against Brad Katona. 5 takedowns against Terrion Ware. 6 takedowns against Ricky Simone in a loss, as well as a knockdown. 11 takedowns against Frankie Saenz. And I think that what we've seen is over time, right? The Frankie Saenz fight, the Ricky Simone fight, very tough start for a guy, like Merab, right? He comes in, he's got a lot of expectations. He's coming off that huge knockout. And then you see what happens when he gets to the UFC, and Frankie Saenz guys put a whooping on him in round 3. No doubt about it. Frankie Saenz was getting after him. And I think that he's gotten better at managing his energy systems. I think he's gotten better at, getting to his offense and finding where he wants to be in the fight, controlling himself a little bit better, staying more calm in the fire. He used to be just a complete reckless fighter. And I do think there's a little bit more craft to what he does, but the striking is still, it's not as clean as O'Malley, not even close, right? We could just be fair about that. But looking at the Simone fight, I already talked about my thoughts there. I get why people think he went out, but I don't agree. Based on my understanding of jiu-jitsu, I think he may have been knocked unconscious, right? If you want to say he was TKO'd, slamming his head into the mat, I'm open to that argument. But if a referee asks you for a sign that you're still there and you give him a thumbs up and then pedal your feet, and then as soon as the guy lets go and says he's out, you look back up and say, no, I'm not, and try to sit up. It just seemed to me like one thing people don't understand if they don't train is when somebody releases the choke, you don't go like, oh, great, like I'm back to normal. It's like you still have to recover a little bit when somebody has just been trying to choke you. You want to get a couple deep breaths. You want to try and get your energy systems back. And I feel like in a lot of cases, people don't give that kind of understanding and benefit of the doubt. Yeah, if I made it to the bell, it's my prerogative if I want to lay here, do a couple of deep breaths for a second. If I thought I won the first 2 rounds, hey, you judge this round against me, no doubt about it. But, it just seemed to me like he was being penalized for the fact he was in a deep submission but didn't go unconscious. So, it was potentially saved by the bell. I'm not sure he was going to get out, any other way. But I think that's where it starts and ends is kind of being saved by the bell. I don't know that he was actually out. Again, open to the TKO, but I don't think he was put unconscious by that choke personally. Knowing what I know about the guillotine, it didn't look like it was right. And, a guy being able to keep pumping his legs like that, you could say he was doing that unconscious. I just don't think so. So for me, guys, let's go back to how these guys match up, because there's a huge disparity, right? You have on the one hand, a guy in Merab Dvalishvili is going to want to put this in the wrestling phase, and a guy in Sean O'Malley who's going to want to keep this in the striking phase. So I think that, the bookmakers open this up, and I want to pull up the odds to make sure that I'm not speaking out of turn here. Bookmakers opened up this price at Bet Online with Merab Dvalishvili about a -140, peaked out about a -173 on Bet Online. From what I'm seeing, I'm looking to see if other books have had similar movement. Looks like Pinnacle opened about a -107 on either side, and they're sitting at about a +113 on O'Malley. So definitely a lot of money is coming on the O'Malley side, right? If you look at recent weeks, we've given a little bit of previous context on these fighters, a little bit of their history, but now let's talk a little bit about the specific context of this matchup. I don't know whether it's like a coordinated media campaign, to get money in on Sean O'Malley, or if Merab Dvalishvili really is just like out there doing a bunch of, negative expected value decisions in the lead up to this fight. But for example, it's like 3 weeks out from the fight. The guy gets a cut. It's all over Instagram. Then, the staph infection rumors are all abound. Does he have a staph infection? And I guess that's an open question, right? Certainly there's a lot of speculation about that. Does Merab have staph? And I could just tell you guys, I have gotten burnt, I feel, by staph in the past. Fighters that are on antibiotics, you expect them to go out there and have cardio, pace, pressure, and they just don't have it, because when you're on antibiotics, it saps your energy tremendously, guys. And it's something that if you haven't experienced, it can really be draining in ways that you don't even expect. Antibiotics very powerful on your body. So I think that looking at that rumor, right? That's the rumor mill is, Merab's injured with the eye. Merab's got staph. He's got all these problems. He's on antibiotics. And then on top of all that, you got one of the most popular fighters in the UFC, Sugar Sean O'Malley, one of the most well-known guys in the UFC, one of the most, frankly, just like transcendent guys that people outside of fighting have kind of started to get a little bit of a feel for who this guy is. That for me is where, a lot of signs point towards like, who does the UFC want to see do well? I mean, they've kind of strapped the rocket ship to his back from the very beginning. They love this guy, Sean O'Malley. They're giving him a huge matchup at the Sphere, right? A show that's near and dear to Dana's heart. He gives him a show in Boston. It's like Dana's favorite venue, right? It's like all these different things, all along the way. Dana's clearly liked this guy, set him up for success. He said Sean O'Malley has it, right? So it's like there's a lot of things that say, hey, you know what? Sean O'Malley, he's got the stamp of approval of the company. He's got the skills on the feet. He's got the knockout power. He's sharp. He already went out there and took out Aljo. He could go out there and do the same thing here. I definitely see that point of view. I see the KO as high as 2-1 on some of the domestic books. And it's like plus 120 at sharper outlets like Bet Online. So I definitely think that if I was to get involved, I'd be looking at finished props on the O'Malley side. I think the way that I see this fight is pretty straightforward. I see a guy in Sean O'Malley who's probably got 3 rounds to finish this fight, and he's not unlikely to do so, right? He has the tools to do it. He's got the skills to do it. He's got the abilities. He's got the aptitude. But I just have a feeling that if the fight gets extended to the 4th and 5th round, that means that something has gone wrong for O'Malley in all likelihood in this spot, because a guy like Merab, he's been clipped early in his fights. A few times we talked about that. Against Henry, he got clipped early, but then he rallied back and dominated towards the end of that fight. And again, something else from a context perspective, something that's really interesting is a guy, shout out to Dixon, says O'Malley does charity work. No, it's not in secret, Dixon. It's done in public as well. It's done in public as well. But yeah, I mean, he's a charitable guy. He does a lot of good things. He came from whatever it's called, a home for people with mental disabilities. Like, he's done a lot of admirable things, no doubt about that. I have no ill will towards either of these guys. But the one thing I'm trying to point to is, a guy like O'Malley, he's got all these opportunities outside of fighting. He's a guy who's young, primed, in a great position. Merab is kind of in a spot where this is his all-in moment in his life and career, He's probably not getting another title shot. It had to take him, what is he on right now? A 10-fight win streak, guys, in the UFC, in one of the most brutal divisions there's ever been. He's on a 10-fight win streak there in order to get, this title shot. And a lot of guys have to get 3 fights, 5 fights, right? And this guy had to get 10 wins in a row in order to get this shot. And I just think that he's going to die on his shield, or he's going to come back, a champion. That's the way that I see this, because I don't think Merab's the kind of guy that's like, you know what, I lost 50 to 45, but I made it to the bell. That for me, it was a huge moral victory. I don't think that he's that guy at all. I think that Merab would rather die than not give everything he has to try and win this. So for me, I feel like you have a guy in O'Malley who has all the skills, tools to get it done. But I think the guy who's got the ultimate motivation, Merab Dvalishvili, and I think that for me, that makes it an honest fight. I think both guys have a chance. I see both guys as having a clear path. And, what we learned, I feel like last time, is that if you want to go out there and make it a pure striking match with O'Malley, and you can't clip him and hurt him, he's probably going to dummy you up over 25 minutes. But now let's wrestle. Let's wrestle and let's see how it goes. I think that it's a fight where you don't want to count out Merab, because we've seen a few times in the past when he's faced adversity, he was able to rally. And for O'Malley, he's been so talented and so skilled, he often doesn't face much adversity. And when he has, it's been against lower end guys. Or it's like the Chito Vera fight, and he faced some adversity and he wasn't able to overcome it that night. And I think that in this fight, Merab Dvalishvili is, like I said, I think he's either going to die on his shield or come back a champion. And whether that's with the guillotine that Sean O'Malley's shown off a little bit, he's got long limbs. He's got that ability to catch people when they're coming in, sit to that high elbow. If he's able to catch him, God bless him. But everything I hear is that Merab is a guy that's very difficult to submit, very difficult to catch in the practice room and otherwise. And, for me, I feel that this is going to be a great scrap. And if he doesn't get knocked out, I think that Merab is going to make it an honest fight. Maybe that's my New York biases. Maybe that's my wrestling biases. I got the shirt on just to show love and let you guys know. I'll always disclose my biases up front. The other thing is, though, I'll never come to you guys and say, I have it all figured out, right? I talked about my struggles betting on a guy like Sugar Sean O'Malley. But if you look and see, when a lot of people were telling you Petr Yan was the lock of the century, I was there with one unit on the machine, Merab Dvalishvili, and he made it look easy, 50-45. In my book, I thought he absolutely dominated the fight. Against Marlon Moraes, I had Moraes in rounds 1 or 2 or Merab by KO or decision, right? I've had faith in this guy in the past, but I've also known it's dicey in the early going, right? In the early going, he is susceptible to getting clipped, getting caught, getting put away. But the longer a fight goes, the more I trust a guy like Merab Dvalishvili to build into a fight. And I feel like a guy like Sugar Sean O'Malley, he hasn't been tested in those deep waters yet. I feel like Chito Vera, with all due respect, offered him very little there. I feel like he kind of left his skills in the back, for lack of a better word. And I just think Merab's not doing that, right? I think Merab's ready. If you look at the fight streak that he's on, guys, let's go through. And before we get off this fight, we just have to examine this, because win, lose, or draw, this is a man that's worthy of our respect. Henry Cejudo, former champion, win via unanimous decision. Petr Yan, former champion, win via unanimous decision. Jose Aldo, former champion, win via unanimous decision. Marlon Moraes fought for the interim belt, win via ground and pound and TKO too. Then you look at the Cody Stamann fight, win via unanimous decision. Dodson fought for a title, win via unanimous decision. Gustavo Lopes, Casey Kenny, Brad Katona, 2-time Ultimate Fighter winner, Terrion Ware. Solid list of opponents, guys. And especially recently, it's been champion after champion after champion, and he's been putting them, under that boot. So let's see if the Georgian can do it. We already cashed on our guy, Ilia Topuria, another Georgian fighter. Shout out to our guy Dixon, says Topuria showed Georgia can have a champion. Merab is next. And I'll tell you what, Spain claims Topuria, but nobody claims Merab like Georgia claims Merab. So I think that it's a fight where both guys worthy of our credit, worthy of our respect, plus money on either side is the way for me. The guys that took O'Malley early, my hat's off to you. I salute you. But the way I see it is that Merab is a crazy pace machine. And there's an expression I've used many times on this show. ABCs say always bet on cardio. Shout out to John Anik. If he heard it from somewhere else, God bless them. But I heard it from John Anik first a long time ago on the Anik and Florian podcast. Shout out to those guys. And I took it to heart, right? The ABCs say always bet on cardio. And in a sport like mixed martial arts, guys, unless you're projecting O'Malley to get the knockout early, then I do think cardio is going to become a factor at some point in this fight. And if you believe that O'Malley has the superior conditioning, then God bless you. You know, I disagree, but I hear your argument. But for me, I just think that is where Merab could separate himself in this fight. He has insane conditioning that is very rare to see in cage fighting, period. And he's 33 or whatever years of age. He's not going to have it for much longer. So I think he's going to go out there and try and maximize right now. And for me, I feel like O'Malley is young enough that he could easily be rebuilt. He could get back to the title level. He could win again. But it's the type of fight where, you know, he's either going to go out there and make a career highlight and do it all again, or he's probably going to be in the toughest fight of his life. And if that's the case, you know, I think that you take the plus money. So that's all. That's the way that I see this fight. I respect the differences of opinion here. I'm not a hater in any facet, right? On this fight, I feel like both these guys deserve a lot of respect, but I think, you know, a lot of people are willing to give O'Malley the respect, and some people aren't willing to give that respect to Merab. And I just think both guys deserve it this time around. Let's circle back with the sharpest chat in the game, guys. I'm going to go all the way up to the top so nobody gets missed. We got our guy Dixon says, Liam, he thinks some Mexicans are losing. Okay, my brother. Let's see how it goes. Ulysses says, sup, Liam, early live today. Manuel Torres should be able to win. Interesting. We'll talk about that one, brother. How come you're picking O'Malley to win? I am not. You know, I feel like it's a binary fight, and I'll do my research and my due diligence. I'll have to come up with an article pick like I do every week, but I don't know why that was the takeaway from my my discussion. Shout out to Belgarui, round 3 TKO. Hey, shout out to our guy Pierce, as well as you know, my smile. I said it, I might have to keep that one to myself, and then all of a sudden Pierce says, you don't have to keep that one to yourself. He caught me. The absolute man. Shout out to Pierce. What up, Liam? Hope you had a good vacation. Absolutely, brother. Shout out to you. Merab is following the DDP and blog game plan. Yeah, I mean, they've shown that it's a viable way to approach these fights, guys. Volume takedown attempts get people tired. You know, I think the Israel Adesanya submission loss was another example of that. So shout out to Dixon. Good call. Merab is smoking, Sean, says Abdi. Whoa. I wouldn't go that far. Father's plan, says Dixon. I don't know if Merab's part of Father's plan, but maybe part of Father's plan is, you know, getting that fight against Merab. I think Umar Nurmagomedov representing Russia and Merab Dvalishvili representing Georgia. That could be a big fight. You and Pierce helped me cash an absolute bag on Contender Series. Hey, shout out to you, Jacob. If you enjoy these shows, guys, drop a like on the show, get subscribed. We're trying to give you know, good information to the people. What we can't do is get it right every time. What we will do is come to you with honest, hard work, our best thoughts, our best information, and, you know, we come out ahead, plus money long term. So I hope that you guys take advantage. God bless you all. Thank you for being here. Shout out to Poetan Do Bronx says, let's go, Liam. Appreciate you. Shout out to Glenbot says it was on Boyle Sport and Patty Power talking about Sean decision at plus 475. Interesting. Okay. 16 of Merab's fights have gone the distance, as Glenbot. A lot of them have not been 5 rounds scheduled, though. I will just add, my brother. I like Sean by decision. Where did you get plus 475? Okay, great stuff. So that's why we got the sharpest chat in the game, helping each other find the best prices, shopping for the best prices. Speaking of which, if you're looking for the best prices, Fight Numbers, guys. They are a sponsor on the show. If you use promo code Liam, they will hook you up with a discount. And what we're talking about is access to the best lines, the best numbers, the best props. And John Kelly, guys, is working constantly on these new little adaptations. If you don't mind my little divergence, we're going to go over and show you on screen here, because this guy is never ceasing to amaze me what he's been working on with the Fight Numbers crew. And Nate Latshaw, who is a statistician that I've recommended many times. If you guys haven't checked it out on X, Nate Latshaw is an absolute, genius statistician who spends a lot of time working on mixed martial arts stuff. I hope you guys can see this on screen. Super excited to release the first ever UFC betting trends tool. I've had this idea for years, and I'm pumped to see it come to life at Fight Numbers with the help of @NateLatchsaw. So, guys, those are the two accounts you're going to want to look for on social media, both very helpful. Whether you end up getting the product or not, both very helpful accounts. Same thing with John Kelly DFS, very helpful accounts. So I hope that you guys can get value from that. Like I said, whether you go with the premium product, whether you just find those guys' information valuable, I can just tell you I get tremendous value from looking at their information. Things like how often fights end inside the distance for this weight class, this division, how often fights end via sub in this weight class over the last 10 years, last 5 years, last 6 years, last 3 years. And you can toggle everything. You can customize everything down to the nth degree to make it a lot more specific. That's how you can find these profitable betting angles long-term. And again, every bet won't win, but if you find winning long-term angles, you can win betting on sports. That's the goal here. Sharp information, sharp reads, and trying to do the right thing long-term. Next up, guys, speaking of long-term, we've got Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko. Last time out, if you bet either side, you got your money back, right? A very rare draw in a title fight. And now we got to have a conclusion, right? It's all about conflict and conflict resolution. That's the name of this business. And I think that what we're looking at is, a fight between two women that are both highly credible, highly skilled, really deserving of the opportunity. But the question becomes, can Valentina Shevchenko change the result, right? And you are looking at an older fighter in this case, in Valentina Shevchenko. She's not old per se, but at 36 years of age, I do start to wonder how many years she has left at the highest level, and I certainly wonder how many years of cutting weight that she has at the highest level. Because if you guys remember, she had a lot of early career success. I'm going to pull up her Tapology right now. If you guys go back and look, Juliana Pena fighting for the title later this year, she defeated her in the bantamweight division, finished her via armbar. So this is a woman that clearly could qualify for a title fight if she was to go back up to the bantamweight division. And ultimately, guys, that's how I thought it was going to go last time. And that's how I feel like it's going to go this time. When I saw the last fight, I said to myself, man, Shevchenko made a lot of the right adjustments. She did a lot of things better. She fought smarter. She didn't make as many mistakes. But when, she made a mistake, Alexa made her pay really bad. This is a woman, and I want to clarify this. I want to go make sure that I fact check myself in real time, but I looked at this earlier, and I believe this to be true. Alexa Grasso, in her last fight, recorded a knockdown against Valentina Shevchenko, okay? Amanda Nunes recorded 0 knockdowns in, 40 minutes of fighting against Shevchenko, okay? So you have to ask yourself, that means one of two things. Either she just caught her right, she just caught her in the correct position, or she's kind of deteriorating in her chin. And that's only to be expected when you've had a lifetime of combat sports, a lifetime of martial arts, a lifetime of, frankly, getting hit in the head. And when you look at Alexa Grasso, the other thing that stands out on UFC stats, she went and she fought Valentina Shevchenko, and she got outlanded the first time that they fought, but she was able to finish her. The second time they fought, she was able to reverse that, right? She was able to outland Valentina. So you've got the fighter who's slightly bigger, the fighter who's slightly younger, or I should say significantly younger, right? So you've got a fighter who's in their prime, right next to their championship level prime, who's now gotten a ton of experience, 40 minutes of experience against Shevchenko to try and build off of. And she's taking her on in a favorable environment where Shevchenko was very open about the fact she did not want to fight her at another Mexico-themed event. Where are we fighting? At a Mexico-themed event. Like, I feel like a lot of the things have been stacked in the favor of Alexa Grasso. And the other thing I would notice is, when you look at Alexa Grasso, I think she's extremely talented. I think she's extremely skilled. But I also think she's shown a little bit of reservation, which is, reasonable. Right, against Shevchenko, one of the best in the division. She doesn't want to go out there and overextend herself. I feel like now she knows, I can submit this girl. I can hit her and hurt her. I can put her on the ground and put her in bad situations. The thing she can't afford to do is get constantly taken down in this fight. So I think that she's going to have worked on her ground game, getting back up to her feet, defending takedowns, and then landing with more impact while they're on the feet, because she already showed she can go out there and land more volume in this rerun. So for me, I feel like over 25 minutes, I prefer to see, Alexa Grasso. I think she's the side here ultimately, because I think that for Valentina Shevchenko to win this fight, I think she's got to fight either, to get a finish, which she said, like, I'm willing to go do. I don't know that she can do that, right? I think that Grasso is a durable, tough girl. I think that she's gritty. I think she's a real competitor. And I think that Shevchenko is not a prolific submission artist, right? So what is she going to do? She has to knock out Alexa Grasso, who I think is very defensively responsible, relative to Valentina. And I think that when I'm looking at this fight, I'm thinking to myself, man, Shevchenko likes to have that bailout strategy, which is the takedowns here. So if she's not able to get to the takedowns, I think she could get very uncomfortable on the feet with Alexa Grasso. I think that the damage could start to add up. Like I said, it's a long career. So for me, I'm feeling like Grasso has a few different paths to win this fight. And I feel like Shevchenko's path to winning it is pretty limited. I think she's got to win it via decision. I think it's possible. I think there's good plus money numbers on Shevchenko via decision, if that's how you envision her getting this done. But ultimately for me, I think that it's not just narrative for me. There's a number of different considerations: narrative, fight, every different angle for me. I just prefer the Alexa Grasso side here. Younger fighter, closer to their prime, all-time motivation spot, I feel. And it's, for me, a woman who was at the peak of her powers a few years ago and already showed signs of decline that I tried to fade on the way down. And now she's trying to get it back all these years later when I already saw those signs of decline. I think the decline could be more rapid in this one, despite the fact that she had a great showing last time. She's now just spent a lot of time out of the cage at the Ultimate Fighter, and I'm not sure how much that's behooved her development, right? Helping other people, it's a great thing. But for me, I feel like what we've seen is Shevchenko, a very natural coach, right? A very natural to maybe start looking at that portion of her career. How can I help other fighters? How can I put others in a position to succeed? But Alexa Grasso, still right in the meat of an athletic career, 31 years of age, and the best thing going in Mexican MMA right now. That's why she's in this position. So for me, I feel like Alexa Grasso is going to get the job done here and retain her championship belt. And I think that it's going to be tough sledding from there on out, right? A lot of very scary contenders on the rise at 125. But I think that Grasso is going to be the one to stand off those contenders. And I think Valentina Shevchenko's future is at 135 pounds. So no disrespect to the Bullet. We wish her well. I think she's a great fighter, but she robbed me excuse my language, she robbed me blind against Talia Santos, in my humble opinion. So I'll just say I think that, the justice was done when we got Alexa Grasso at plus 660. Now, do I want to chase it to the chalk number? Not necessarily, but I think she gets the job done. So if you're asking me for my first look is Alexa Grasso getting this job done against Valentina Bullet Shevchenko. And I've already shared on Patreon some thoughts I have on the prop market, as well as some thoughts I had, on previous iterations of this fight in the prop market. And I'll just say I was one of the few people that not only called Grasso to win the fight, but I called her to win it by submission on Roto Grinders in, live and in color, right? So I'm going to show you guys, just so you know that I'm not talking out of my butt. I think that was UFC 285, right? Jones versus Gane. My co-host on a show that I did for Roto Grinders won the 100,000 or whatever it is for winning the big takedown for UFC 285. And it was in part a result of our call on Alexa Grasso. So if you guys see here, I think I got the round wrong. I think it was round 4, if my memory is serving. But I'm sharing the wrong page now, guys. I'm not technically competent. Please forgive me. Here we go. UFC 285 breakdown. All in lettering And we'll read a little excerpt here. Valentina Shevchenko has been a long-reigning champion in the women's flyweight division, but the division has started to catch up to her, as evidenced by her most recent bout in which she was awarded a controversial split decision against unheralded Brazilian challenger Talia Santos. Liam's brief editorial, I bet Talia Santos plus 400 in that spot for 2.5 units. I got absolutely robbed blind. In any case, Alexa Grasso began her run as a UFC strawweight, but she has been purposeful about acquiring mass and developing her physicality as she climbed the ranks at flyweight. Fact. Then she dispatched Joanne Wood in short order at UFC Columbus. I was there in person. She absolutely dispatched that woman. The fight proved Grasso has the cardio to fight for a full 25 minutes against Viviana Rujao. She has the tenacity to compete without losing focus. Guys, did you hear that? Without losing focus. Who lost focus first? Shevchenko. Who broke focus first? Shevchenko. She went for that spin kick when she shouldn't have. She gave up the neck, and that was all she wrote. And if you look here, Alexa Grasso defeats Shevchenko via club and sub. I thought it was going to have to be set up with the punches, but no. I mentioned Grasso, a BJJ purple belt with proficient boxing, a maturing kicking game, and people are counting her out unjustly. Bang. We were there. We were there live and in color. We knew what was about to happen. We tried to tell you what time it was. So I think that for me, it's always been Alexa Grasso's fight. It's always been her fight to lose. And I think last time was a little bit of an underperformance. I think this time she's ready to go in prime time. And I think she's going to get this job done. Woo, boy. Next up, guys, I'm going to take an old swig of the water, or excuse me, a swig of the coffee. We got the water here as well. Got to stay hydrated. Got no gi in a little bit. So let's start cruising a little bit. We'll take it to a cruising altitude for Brian Ortega taking on Diego Lopes. Guys, this is going down at 145 pounds. And I must say, I wrote this fight up before, so I've already given some thoughts about this one. I love both these guys, right? It's like I hate fighting sometimes because they pit your favorite fighters against each other, and then you got to decide, right? It's like deciding between who's your favorite kid. You never want to give an answer. But when you're looking at this kind of fight, I'm saying to myself, a guy in Brian Ortega, he cashed me out nicely against Yair Rodriguez last time, but he gave me 3 heart attacks, guys. The guy's jumping up and down before the fight. He blows out his ankle, right? So I'm seeing him roll his ankle. I'm having a heart attack in real time. Then he's out there getting absolutely walloped for about 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes. I was like, oh my God, this is a disgustingly poor representation of what we need to see right now. And eventually, guys, he's able to get the fight into the grappling phase. He's able to use his wrestling. And there's versions of Brian Ortega that could definitely beat Diego Lopes, right? If you look, the Brian Ortega that beat Korean Zombie is the best Brian Ortega that I ever saw personally. And it's a guy that fought so calculated, so controlled, but he remained violent, dangerous, lethal throughout. And you saw in that fight great examples of different things he could do. He could mix up the level changes to his takedowns against an elite BJJ guy. He could go out there and fight for 5 hard rounds. He could go out there and land big spinning elbow, take the trajectory of the fight and change it completely. Korean Zombie after the fight said, I don't remember what happened after the second round. Like he got hit so hard, he forgot what time it was. So you think about this guy, and Brian Ortega has put on absolute master classes before inside the octagon. I mean, first man to ever knock out Frankie Edgar. And not only did he knock him out, guys, he absolutely sent him to the land of wind and ghosts. He was landing big shots. He was landing big elbows. And then he went whing, uppercut through the roof. And, he took Frankie with him, lifted him off of his feet. So this guy, Brian Ortega, packs a punch. He's got great skills. He's an excellent ground fighter. I just think that his body is falling apart at this point in his life and career. And against Yair Rodriguez, he's basically in a fine position to withdraw his arm, right? In order to get out of an arm bar, in order to get out of some of these situations, you have to do what's called a limp arm. And instead of having a lot of tension, right, you could have tense arms or you could have a limp arm and just let your arm go limp and pull it out of a situation that's tight. And so if you're in a wrestling whizzer and somebody's trying to barrel down on it hard, you might have to limp arm your way out of it. You understand? So I think that when you look at, this guy, Brian Ortega, he went to do a simple limp arm, right? Limp arm out of a arm bar. And he hurt his shoulder really bad to the point where he had to call off the fight instantly. Okay. And then I see, a guy in Brian Ortega go out there against Yair Rodriguez, and in the rematch, he hurt himself again, and he almost got TKO'd. So Yair is a unique case. He's a very talented fighter on the feet, but on the ground, he's a complete question mark, right? He's got some decent offensive jiu-jitsu, but we've seen guys like Frankie Edgar in the later stage of his career take him down and audit him, just audit him in every position. Volkanovski was like, why would I fight this guy on the feet when I could easily just take him down on the ground and beat him up? And then, by the way, beat him up a little bit on the feet too. So Yair's a guy that's got great offense, very potent on offense. But he almost got knocked out by Josh Emmett, and he got hurt by Ortega a little bit, and then he got taken down and absolutely routed on the ground. He got exhausted within 7 minutes. So there's a lot of things that are questionable about a guy like Yair. And I think that when I'm looking at a guy like Diego Lopes, he hasn't been beating the same quality of opposition. He hasn't fought the same quality of opposition that a guy like Brian Ortega has. But when he fought a guy like Movsar Evloev, another guy who looks like he's a top-end guy in this division, a guy who's on his way to this top 5, right? When he fought Movsar, he was able to go out there and give him a real run on short notice, very short notice. And I bet him as like a +6 whatever underdog in that spot, +6 XX. And guys, he had him in locked-in triangles at the end of rounds, saved by the bell, all this stuff. This guy, Diego Lopes, is a serious offensive threat against everybody, right? His jiu-jitsu, I don't expect I don't expect his jiu-jitsu to be the kind of thing that goes out there to trouble a guy like Ortega if they're both sober, right? If they're both like here and they just get into a grappling exchange, I do not see Diego Lopes out grappling a guy like Brian Ortega, who's come up with the Gracie, the Henner Gracie crew, who's literally been a prodigy in jiu-jitsu for most of his life. I don't see him doing that. But if he lands one of those big hammers that he's got, if he lands a huge shot, if Brian goes to take him down and he hits a judo throw and puts Brian on his head, then those are the ways I think that you could see his jiu-jitsu maybe have some potency. I think that Diego Lopes is built like a tank. He lands a lot of really hard shots. He's a very dangerous guy, but he takes a ton of risks. He's a guy that comes in throwing. And one thing to consider, guys, that I feel like a lot of people don't talk about is Diego Lopes trains in Mexico. He trains Mexican fighters. He has a great reputation and respect for the Mexican people, by the Mexican people. He lives and trains amongst them, right? But he's a Brazilian guy. Diego Lopes is from Brazil, right? And meanwhile, Brian Ortega is a Mexican-American, basically standout fighter for a long time, fought at the top of the UFC, and he's a star. He's a guy that's, he translates on social media. People know who this guy is. They respect Brian Ortega. He's been in title fights. He's been at the top echelon. And you look at the losses over time. He's lost to, basically the best guys. He had the injury, like I mentioned, against Yair. He lost to Alexander Volkanovski. And if you guys remember that fight, I've bet against Volkanovski just a handful of times, okay? I think this will be an interesting exercise, all right? Let's see if we can find this. So Brian Ortega, here we go. Here we go. We're going to look at my history betting on Alexander Volkanovski because I think it can be illustrative of what I'm trying to get across here. So if you look, I've basically only bet against Volkanovski 3 times in his UFC run. And the 3 guys, I could give you the simple rationale. I bet against him with Brian Ortega because I said before the fight, Brian Ortega for me was the most dangerous guy Volkanovski had ever fought. He had the jiu-jitsu, he had the power on the feet, and I was like, this guy is going to kill him or die trying. And he did everything in his power to win that fight. And I truly believe that we have seen Brian Ortega spend himself for victory in the cage, and it just didn't go his way in some of the biggest fights of his career. And that sucks, but it's just the truth, right? And he's a guy that deserves the credit and the respect, the payment, everything, right? Because he's a gangster and he went out there and threw down in ways that most people never will, right? We talk about the style of fighting we love to watch. This guy had nothing to offer Max Holloway on the feet, and he tried to walk him down for 20 minutes. He tried to throw every round. He tried to keep going, and Max was giving him lessons. He felt so bad for the big skill disparity. But this guy just did not ever stop trying to pursue victory. And the same thing can be said against Volkanovski. Guys, so many people, when the referee is like asking, like, do you remember what day it is? And like all these different things, they would have just found the way out there. And this guy finds a way to just like BS his way through a talk with the referee while he's clearly concussed. This man wants the smoke. He is all about that action. So doubting the heart and the toughness and the will of Ortega would be a huge mistake. But I just doubt a little bit at this point the durability, because I've seen a lot of examples now where he can get hurt, he can get cracked, and not just, I'm talking about the striking, right? Because he's a very durable guy. He's very hard to hurt with strikes. But what I mean is he's just falling apart physically, where his limbs are having a hard time holding up. He's having a hard time not getting injured in the pre-fight warm-up. And he really struggles to make it to these fights. We saw that he was supposed to fight Diego Lopes, and Diego Lopes made it to that fight, guys. Brian Ortega did not. Brian Ortega had to pull out of that fight. He had to say, hey, I can't make it. I can't make the weight. I'm not feeling well. I'm feeling sick. He's got to make the weight now. And he had already talked about, if you guys remember my last breakdown, in the lead up, I need to get down in weight. I need to, because I wanted to move up to 155. That was my move. I was going to move up to 155. So now his move up to 155 has been delayed. Do they want him to go kill a contender at 145 and then move up to 155? It all just seems to be a little bit in between, right? I feel like Diego Lopes has no question what his job is, which is to go out there and get a title shot, to go out there and earn his spot. And for Brian, I feel like he's a little bit in limbo right now in terms of the motivation. I think he wants to win. I think he wants to go out there and compete and represent. But I do wonder, what is his path to the title? What is he really expecting here? And the thing that I wanted to note about this is Volkanovski at the time was the best fighter in the world, in my view. And I thought Brian Ortega at plus 150 was a decent enough bet to go half a unit shot there. I also was on Volk against Max in the third fight when people were not expecting, they were thinking Max was value at the plus money. And I was like, I think Volk's going to finish him. I was wrong about that, but I thought it was going to be the case, right? When you look at the Yair fight, another time where I went just a half unit against Volk, because these are guys that offer some threats, but they didn't have the same defense, right? A guy like Ilia Topuria, I felt like checked all the boxes. He was marketable. He had everything. He kind of checked all these boxes. And so for me, when I look at these guys and their results, I've done very well, with a guy like Ortega, right? If you look at Ortega, I've had a lot of good success, but one of the squarest bets I ever made in my life was trying to fade Brian Ortega at this similar price range. So I'll just tell you guys, learn from my mistakes, right? You fade Brian Ortega at minus 180 at your peril, because I thought it was going to be easy money, right? I thought it was going to be Chan Sung Jung, catching Brian Ortega at the right time. And I believe, if you guys remember, Brian Ortega fought Max Holloway and got beaten so bad it looked like he might never fight again. It was that kind of beatdown, right? It was so bad. It was brutal. And you don't often associate Max Holloway fights with absolute brutal beatdowns. That was one of them. He's been getting better at that over the course of his career, and absolute drubbing, and he responded to that with a huge win. He responded to that in a huge way. So this guy, Brian Ortega, has got balls. He's got courage. He's got heart. He's got skills. He's got destructive capabilities. He checks a lot of boxes, but I think the same thing is true of Diego Lopes, right? And I just think that when you're looking at a guy like this, who's 29 years of age, he's on the right side of his prime. He hasn't been in those same amount of damaging fights at the UFC level, where he's going 25 minutes with a guy that's trying to take his head off, like Max Holloway, like Alexander Volkanovski. Both those guys took years off the life, potentially, of Brian Ortega. And, to see a guy that's going to have this slight size advantage as well in Lopes, those are all things I'm taking into account here, right? He's the younger guy. He's the bigger guy. He's had more professional experience. But you're also seeing that this is a guy, you got to respect Brian Ortega. You got to respect his capabilities, but we're looking back and he's 5-2 as a UFC underdog. Sensational, 83.7% return on investment. The thing is, Diego Lopes has done the right things as well. When he's been favored to win these fights in the UFC, he's 3-0, right? In this recent run, minus 275 against Ige, got the decision win, minus 135 against Sadiq Youssef, knocked him out in the first round, minus 164 against Gavin Tucker, got the submission in the first round. This guy has been absolutely sensational. So both of these guys are money. Both these guys are absolute hammers. And I'm excited to see this one shake out. I got to give you a lean. I'm going to lean towards the Diego Lopes side. I picked him last time they were scheduled to fight. I think with a full camp, I don't change too much here, but exactly, Luke, it's two of my favorite guys. So I'm brutal. I'm brutal on this fight, man. It's a difficult one. Let's see here. Brian has a lot of sharps on him, but the line isn't moving much. Man, I'm not sure about that. That's curious to me. But yeah, I definitely know some sharps that like that side. Technically, when we're in the Star Wars universe, okay. I lost something along the way there, guys. Glenbot says Crispy Bacon Nation. Absolutely. You know that that's true. I am the Crispy Bacon Whisperer. If you guys aren't following me on X, you're missing out on a lot of great bacon content in addition to the fighting. So something you want to get take full advantage of, right? But next up, guys, we can move along to the next main card fight. And I'll just tell you guys, right? I'm going to always let tape be my guide. I'm always going to let tape be my guide. But I'll tell you off the rip, one thing that stood out to me, Esteban Ribovics is giving up a ton of size in this fight, guys. He's giving up 8 inches of reach. He's giving up 3 inches of height in this matchup. So you're seeing 77 inches of reach on the Zellhuber side against 69 inches of reach on the Ribovics side. That's very substantial. And the one thing I'll note is Ribovics has looked sensational in a lot of his UFC fights. He's 2-1 in the UFC, lost a decision against Loic Radzhabov, but forced him to take him down 11 times, kept working back up to his feet, kept being stingy about it. And then he was able to defeat Kemwella Kirk, a result that I predicted. He was able to defeat Terrence McKinney via head kick in the first round, more sensational than anybody could have expected, I feel. And so for me, this guy Esteban Ribovics is a dangerous fighter. He's a fun fighter. But the thing you've got to keep in mind, Thomas Paul, who he fought on Contender Series, is 5'7" with a 67-inch reach. Okay. Loic Radzhabov is 5'11" with a 69-inch reach, and he was able to defeat Esteban Ribovics, although granted he was able to go out there and out-wrestle him for the most part. Kemwella Kirk is 5'10" with a 75-inch reach. So I think that's the biggest fighter he's fought so far in the UFC. And then Terrence McKinney, 5'10", with a 73.5-inch reach. So meanwhile, guys, now he goes from taking on those guys who are all pretty small for the division to taking on a 6'1", 77-inch reach, Daniel Zellhuber, who is very big, very long, and a dangerous guy. So for me, I feel like Daniel Zellhuber, he had one stinker, right? He came to the UFC, he had that debut jitters, and he just went out there and did nothing, threw nothing, committed to nothing against Trey Ogden and watched his debut pass him by. And you were thinking to yourself, is this guy a bust? Is this guy just not a UFC fighter? But so many times people jump right off the train. I always try not to reserve, I try to reserve judgment for after somebody's had a few fights in the UFC. He went out there and beat Lucas Almeida in a fun back and forth scrap. He went out there and beat Lando Venata in a fun back and forth scrap. He went out there and styled on Francisco Prado a little bit last time, but there were still some close competitive exchanges. And then, he busted up the eye. If my memory serves, he kind of did some good damage in that fight. Then you look at, at the Yagos fight, guys. The Yagos fight is another telling performance because he was able to go out there, rally from a little bit of adversity. Yagos starts hot, right? He fights like something's burning on the pan at home. And then you see Yagos come out there. He's burning hot. And this guy Zellhuber keeps his composure. He's able to outlast him. He's able to outwork him. And then he's able to put him away. So I think this kid's got good skills. I'll also just say, if you go back to his Lux Fight League calf slicer, I mean, that was incredible. The guy's got weird dexterous skills in all positions. And he's shown a well-rounded game. 3 wins by submission, 7 wins by knockout, 5 wins by decision. The guy's just shown a well-rounded ability. He can put you away on the feet, on the mat. He can put you away or go the full distance, right? And if he goes the full distance, he's got one hang up in a fight where he did nothing. I feel like if he rematched Trey Ogden, he could go out there and defeat him, honestly. But, he didn't show up on the night. So Dixon is saying his gut is telling him Zelly decision. It's always possible. I think he's got the ability to win this fight, a few different ways, honestly. I think he could paint a picture with his jab at distance. I think he could do enough damage that the doctor is forced to intervene and step in if he's a little insistent with that jab and that pressure, as he was against a smaller opponent last time out. And, I think if we see bad takedown attempts, he could definitely get to that front headlock series. He's got the long limbs that open it up. So that is certainly a consideration. And I think Ribovics on the other side, guys, we mentioned he had great results. Knocked out McKinney with the head kick, defeated Kemwella Kirk, knocked out Thomas Paul in the first round. He's had a lot of good, solid performances. but he hasn't fought the highest level of competition in or out of the UFC. And I think this is a big step up. So for me, give me the golden boy, Daniel Zellhuber. That's my pick. Next up, guys, we got Ronaldo Rodriguez, lazy boy, taking on Ode Osbourne. This is a fight that seems to have two very viable paths here. You know, when I'm looking at it, I'm seeing to myself, Ronaldo is a guy that had a very bad performance against Jerome Rivera, and that has not aged very well. Jerome Rivera really struggled in the UFC, but he was very young, you know, so you want to give him a little bit of a pass. Then he goes out there and fights Victor Moreno to a split decision, and Victor Moreno was a 34-year-old Colombian gentleman, and, you know, it was a very competitive fight. That was a main event fight, and he was just 23 years of age, but, you know, he's having to go tooth and nail with some of these regional level fighters, and frankly, the Dennis Bondar fight was a lot of bad footage, and then he got the win. So he did what he needed to. He was able to go out there and close the show, but the stat line was not great for that fight. And Dennis Bondar is a pretty average guy in my view. Now, on the Ode Osbourne side, he's been doing a lot of losing in the UFC, 4-5 in the promotion for a negative record. So not what you want to see, but you want to talk about, you know, the quality of wins. Charles Johnson, great win. CJ Vergara, fine win. Jerome Rivera, common opponent. He knocked him out in the first round. So I just think that you've kind of seen that this guy, Ode Osbourne, can go out there and get UFC level wins. I don't really take much away from the Zaruk Adashev fight. The CJ Vergara win is okay. But again, Vergara is kind of just a tough guy, not really a master of skills. I think that when you're looking at Charles Johnson, you know, that's a win that's aged pretty well. He was able to get some takedowns in that fight. I think there were some fouls, some back and forth shit. I'd have to go back and rewatch the film, but to have that win on your resume at this point, when Charles Johnson right now is on a 3-fight win streak, just knocked out Joshua Van, who we'll discuss. You know, I think that there's just a lot of credit that needs to be given. I think losing to Tyson Nam, losing to Manel Kape, you know, it shows that his chin's not great. Getting guillotined by Brian Kelleher, getting choked by Asu Amabayev and Filo, it tells you that he can be susceptible on the mat. For me, though, the thing about this fight is Ronaldo Rodriguez, pretty low volume in terms of his striking output on the UFC stat line. So he's going to need to up that, you know, if he wants to compete on the feet. But I think his best path to victory is trying to just get a submission off here. Because if you look at Ode Osbourne's career, he has been susceptible to the submission, 4 losses via sub, the majority of his career losses via submission, 6 losses inside the distance, 4 coming by way of submission. So that's been the biggest problem for him. But I will just give him a little bit of a pass and say this. Did he look good against Jafel Filo? No, but Jafel Filo is a beast on the mat, a legit black belt. So I thought to myself, that's a horrible matchup for him. Asu Amabayev is a primary grappler. That's what he's always going to go out there and look to do. Charles Johnson wants to go out there and stand up with you on the feet. So the fact that Ode mixed up the wrestling a little bit was to his benefit, in my opinion. The Tyson Nam fight, you know, he just got busted out by a guy who's got huge power in his hands and a guy I really respect. Even though he's older in his career, he's had a ton of like professional high level fights. So getting clipped by Nam, it's part of the game. Zaruk Adashev, he was able to go out there and knock him out. Good win. CJ Vergara, like I said, it's not a great win, but the thing that was concerning is his third round there. He slowed down tremendously. So for me, I kind of see Lazy Boy as having a path to either win this late or to win it, you know, via submission. Other than that, though, I kind of see Ode Osbourne as being the more powerful, committed striker on the feet. And he's got a lot of UFC experience now under his belt. So he's fighting in Vegas. He's a Vegas guy. I think he's like a teacher as well. So not a ton of bullish things in that regard, but a guy that they've given a bunch of huge opportunities to fight on pay-per-views and these kind of things. And he doesn't always fumble in those spots. You know, if you look back, trying to see here, actually, yeah, he hasn't won on a pay-per-view yet. He's 0-2. So can he make it 0 or no. I lied. He's 1-2. He got the win over CJ Vergara at the UFC 268 card in Miami. But he lost at UFC 265. I think that was in Houston, and he lost at the McGregor Cerrone card. I want to say that one was in Vegas. So he's had a little bit of an up and down career, but you might say that he's fighting for his career here, coming off of 2 straight losses with all the guys that they've got coming into the UFC. I think that my guy Dixon is kind of on point. Bondar is not a very good fighter. I think that Ode is very live to win this fight via knockout, honestly. Let's go. First time catching the show live. Hey, shout out to you, bet guy. If it's at the end of round 1, it would be a round 1 TKO. Yeah, fair enough. I don't get why Ode is the dog here. I think that I understand it because they're going to get hammered with Ronaldo Rodriguez money, but I think that there will be sharp money on the Ode Osbourne side. The thing is, though, Ode can get submitted here. So, like, I think if you have a huge position on Ode, I would probably hedge that off with some Ronaldo Rodriguez submission or something like that, just because it's been such a clear liability for him throughout his career. And yet the price is still pretty reasonable when Ronaldo Rodriguez seems to me like a pretty grappling reliant fighter against anybody good. But I will let the tape study once again be my guide. One thing I will mention, guys, as we move to this next fight, which is a women's bantamweight contest, Irene Aldana is taking on Norma Dumont, Big Norm. This is a spot where, Irene Aldana is listed at 36 years of age compared to 33 for Norma Dumont. So Norma's a little bit closer to that fighting prime, that athletic prime, but the bigger fighter here is Irene Aldana. She is the Mexican by heritage. You've got a Norma Dumont fighting out of Brazil. And I think that you look at Irene Aldana, and she's got rare power for women's MMA, 8 wins by knockout. 3 of those have come in the UFC. And I think that people forget, she swung it out with Larissa Pacheco and then ended up getting knocked out in round 3, but she landed some good shots of her own in that fight, showed a lot of toughness and heart as well. She got put out by Tanya Evinger on the ground and pound. Her ground game has been a source of frustration throughout her career. It's not her strong suit. She's got some decent up kicks. She's got some decent guard work, but frankly, she's just a limited ground player. But when you look at what she does bring to the table, it's the power. She has wins over Yana Santos, Ketlen Vieira, and Macy Chiasson via stoppage due to strikes. And the Macy Chiasson one was like a gunshot from bottom. She hits her with that up kick to the body, fell over like she got sniped, craziness. Then you see the fight against Yana Santos. I think Yana Santos may have been pregnant for that fight, which we're not supposed to talk about. But in any case, the Ketlen Vieira fight, you can't take anything away from that. It was one of the cleanest left hooks you will ever see in WMMA. Put her down badly with that. And I think that you got to show some credit and respect to Irene Aldana, who's been in there with a lot of the best fighters in the world. And did she lay an absolute egg against Amanda Nunes? Yes. But did she go out there and put on a fight of the year against Carol Hosa the next time out? Yeah, she did. It was a great fight. And she was showing that her toughness, her willingness to compete has not gone away. She got leg kicked to death and just kept fighting. And I think that when you look at Norma Dumont, if she's not closing the distance to grapple in this one, I do not love her chances on the feet, stand-up based in a pure striking match. I just do not. Watching her habits, her tendencies, she got dropped by Carol Hosa, in a fight where Carol Hosa then clinched her till the end. It was in round 3. It was very strange. I felt that Carol just has bad finishing instincts, to be frank, right? She's never gotten a finish in her UFC career. That's all the evidence you need for that. When you look at the Irene Aldana side, though, she's a very powerful hitter. And Norma Dumont, guys, has bad defense, fundamentally, in my humble opinion, right? If you watch her on tape, when she's not in the clinch, when she's not grabbing hold of somebody, when she's not wrestling, her hand just drift defensively. She'll be here, like she'll look like she has a good stance and just start dropping it. And then anytime somebody swings, they're connecting. And you look back, guys, Megan Anderson was able to put her down bad. And I just encourage you guys, go back and rewatch that one. That was earlier on in her career, but then go back and watch the Carol Hosa fight where she just gets hit clean and she's kind of in a squared up stance, gets dropped badly. Irene Aldana has a left hook that'll make you pay. If you just want to hang out and not move your head and not block punches, she will throw back and she's not afraid of that. So I think clear path to victory, very binary fight. You got a Norma Dumont who could go out there and wrestle to a decision in all likelihood, or you've got on the other side an Irene Aldana who could probably, find the kill shot on the feet. I honestly would not be surprised. So good stuff. All right, folks. I got to go rapid fire here because I've got no-gi class after this, but I will always circle back if I need to do more content on the prelims. Whatever it is that you guys want. If you want to talk about trends, if you guys want to talk about previous performance and odds range, anything that you want to talk about, you hit me up in the comment section down below. And if it calls for another live stream, we'll do another live stream later. But for now, we're going rapid fire, and we're talking about a lightweight bout. This one is going to be Manuel El Loco Torres taking on La Hula Ignacio Bahamondes. And I'm pretty sure we've got a Chilean fighter taking on a Mexican fighter, Manuel Torres, against Ignacio Bahamondes. Fantastic fight. You've got the Valley Flow Striking Academy represented by Ignacio Bahamondes. And on the other side, Manuel Torres, I'm not sure exactly where he gets his training in. I got to double check that, but I believe he trains with the contingency in Mexico. So let me look up El Loco UFC. It's just Loco UFC. Excuse me. So Loco UFC. Let's see if we could find where he's training real quick in real time. I'm gonna have to abandon this struggle bus. Aldamis Muay Thai Gym. I don't recognize these fellows. Azteca San Diego Boxing Club with Mr. Wonderful Phil Baroni. Okay, yeah. So he's training with some of the guys in San Diego. He's traveling around getting a bunch of different looks in. I'll just tell you guys, we have to look at his Instagram together because this guy is in incredible physical condition, guys. Absolutely incredible. If you guys look, this is one of the most jacked dudes right now at the 155-pound division. No room left for, body fat, right? This man is all muscularo, very strong guy, very big, powerful guy. But here's the problem, right? When you have big, powerful muscles, when you're big and strong, you can basically fight hard for 7.5, 8, 10 minutes. It's very hard to do it over long periods of time. You look at a guy like John Jones, he never looked like a bodybuilder, right? He has long muscles. He could fight 25 minutes. And I think that when you're looking at a guy like Manuel Torres, my guy Dixon thinks that he's going to gas out and lose a decision. I think that's possible, right? I think that it's possible he gasses out here, but he is a big finisher in the early going. And I will just say, when you look at the UFC stats, the one thing that is a little bit jarring is Bahamondes, guys. Very, very talented fighter. Very long in his own right. Long, big, tall, hits from far away, can do a lot of damage, can put up insane volume counts in the striking. But he's absorbing 4.38 significant strikes per minute. And he got absolutely busted up by John McDessie. It's a miracle a doctor didn't intervene in that one. He was bleeding all over the place. Got absolutely run up and done up in that one. And you look at some of these other fights, Ludovic Klein was able to just bully him a little bit physically in terms of the wrestling and grappling, getting on top of him. For me, Manuel Torres, probably has 10 minutes to win this one. So the ABC is saying always bet on cardio. They might be telling you to go the other way on this fight. But I do think Manuel Torres is a big finisher. He's a dangerous guy. You look throughout his career, he's got 14 wins inside the distance, an equal balance of 7 knockouts and 7 submissions. Just one fight ever has gone the distance. And by the way, he won that decision. So he's a guy that's only been the distance once, but most of the time he's getting it done in the very first round. And he's on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fight first round finish streak. And that's just really impressive. That's the kind of guy Dana White likes to promote, but he also likes Ignacio Bahamondes spinning back kick at the horn when he absolutely sent Roosevelt Roberts to the land of wind and ghosts. So for me, fun fight, great scrap, 2 Latin warriors. I think that's fair to say. And either way, they're going to bring the heat. They're going to bring the spirit. The bigger guy here is Bahamondes. The younger guy here is Bahamondes. But the more dangerous guy in round 1, I do believe, is Manuel Torres. Both guys are dangerous in round 1. Bahamondes showed that last time, but most of the time he's an accumulative fighter. He's a guy that'll take you out late. Round 2 and round 3 finishes all over his resume. So I think it's a fun fighter and a great scrap. Should be a good fight. And I think it should be lined pretty closely. 2 explosive fighters, 2 very talented guys. Next up, we've got Yazmin Jauregui. She let me down one time, guys. I will tell you, Yazmin let me down one time against Denise Gomes. I thought this girl was the next best prospect in the division, and she got absolutely blasted out of there. She showed some vulnerabilities against Yazmin Lucindo, but Lucindo has shown herself to be a very talented fighter, 3-1 in the promotion, wins over Polyana Viena and Karolina Kovalkiewicz. So Lucindo is no joke, and to get that win is serious and a great win. Estela Nunes, that win doesn't tell me as much, but hey, fair play to her. She did the damn thing. Sam Hughes, that's a tough girl to get the jump on. She's a journey woman type of deal, but if you want to be serious in the sport, you got to win, in that kind of setting. So I'm glad to see it. Shout out to my guy Dixon, says I have to pull up Jauregui's new ab picture. It is probably juiced to the absolute edges of the universe. So here, let's see it. Let's take a look here. Oh boy. Yeah, I see what you're saying, my man. I see what you're saying. Looking like Ludovic Klein herself. Here we go. We got Jauregui looking absolutely jacked in the lead up to this one, guys. So definitely something you want to keep in the back of your mind here. This girl Jauregui looks like she is a action figure in the lead up to this one. I think she's a really talented fighter. I think she's got a chance to go out there and do whatever she wants to Ketlen Souza. Unfortunately, I think Ketlen Souza is not a terrible fighter, but you look at some of the losses on her resume and they just, they're very concerning, right? Losing to regional level fighters via finish, got leg kick TKO'd in the first round by a talented girl, but it still happened back in 2020. Got finished via body kick round 3 against Ariane Carnelosi, which wouldn't be so bad if Carnelosi wasn't a huge gasser. That's definitely concerning. She got armbarred in the first round by Fabiolano Mello, who was 1-3-1 at the time. And physically, it's just not all there, right? She looks a little bit soft to the body. I'm just calling a spade a spade. I don't want to be rude. I thought that the Karine Silva fight, fair play to her, right? Like losing that fight was no skin off her nose. But then the Marnik Mann fight wasn't all that impressive to me. For me, I just feel like this woman is probably going to be, up against it here. So I like Jauregui. I think she's going to win this fight, and I don't think it's going to be particularly competitive, honestly. Next up, guys, we got Edgar Chairez, Puro Chicali, taking on the fearless Joshua Van, 28 years old against 22 years old. And if you guys have stuck around this show for a long time, you know something about me. I consider it an age advantage when somebody's like 3, 5, 8, 10 years younger, but maybe not when they're 22 years of age. Why? He's not even a man yet, right? He's not 25 years of age. His physicality is not fully developed. His brain is not fully developed. And I think that when you're having a guy like Josh Van, who's as talented as he is, get right back in there after just getting cleaned up by Charles Johnson, I think it's a mistake. I think this is a guy that got hurt against Kevin Borjas, but he was able to rally. He had a difficult first round against Felipe Bunes, and he was able to rally. He had a lot of canceled bouts. He had a lot of frustration, confusion. He had a close fight against August Umagulov, went to split decision. He got choked out by Devin Jackson, a guy that we saw struggle against Jack Duffy, right? If you guys remember Jack Duffy from Contender Series, who's going to be back later on this year, he went out there and lost to Jack Duffy, got out-wrestled in that fight. He easily out-wrestled Joshua Van and submitted him in the second round. So I think that you got to consider a guy in Joshua Van getting better all the time, certainly a talented guy, but Charles Johnson's not the guy that's going to go out there and necessarily test your wrestling, test your grappling, right? He's got some submissions on his resume, but in the UFC, he's a striker, man. He wants to go out there and keep things upright, land his big shots, get after his offense, get the volume going, right? That's what we've seen from a guy like Charles Johnson. Now, when you look at the Edgar Chairez side, Edgar Chairez has one really frustrating element about his game. He's just low volume, right? If you see Edgar Chairez go out there, I think that my guy Dixon hit the name on the head, right? He's going to be behind on the punch count from the go. I think that that's correct, right? I think he's just a little bit too patient, too willing at times. But he does have two things that can make it a winnable fight. What do I mean by that? Edgar Chairez, guys, has power in his hands, right? And some guys, you don't see the power in their hands because you look at the topology and they got a lot of wins by submission. And this guy has a dangerous guillotine choke. He's got some ability to go out there and hunt these submissions on the ground, get takedowns, that kind of thing. But he's got a lot of power as well. If you go back and look, Edgar Chairez had lost to Axel Osuna, Alberto Trujillo, two guys that were both considered very solid on the Combate scene. But when he came back against David Macias Ruiz, he was behind on the strike count. And how did he get back into that fight? He landed a big shot upstairs, knocked him down, and then hopped on his back and choked him. So it shows on his record, if you go back and look, hey, this guy submitted him. But the truth is he stood toe-to-toe with him on the feet, waited for his power shots to connect, and dropped him. And when you look, I think that it's important to note Joshua Van is very difficult to out-grapple when he's fresh, when he's competent, when he's coherent. But could he get clipped and could he get hurt? Yes, we know it now. It's happened multiple times in a short UFC sample size. He's still just 22. So we know that Chairez has power. We know he's going to come out swinging. We know he's got an ability to win the fight by submission if they mix it up. Who's got the wrestling and grappling upside? I would have to think more often than not, it's, Edgar Chairez. So for me, I feel like Van has a chance to win this via knockout. He's got a chance to win this via decision. But I'll tell you guys, the guy who knocked down Tatsuro Taira, the guy who, basically has been controlled for 14 minutes out of 30 against two good grapplers. And then, it really skews his ability to show his skills. I think that when you go out there and you're a guy like Edgar Chairez, you get controlled by Clayton Carpenter, you get controlled by Tatsuro Taira. It kind of gives people this certain idea of where you're at. But he's a guy that can fight hard for a long duration of time. He's a tough guy. If you go back and look, it took Jesus Aguilar till the 5th round to submit him with that guillotine choke that put homeboy from Australia to sleep face down in the very first round. So this guy, Edgar Chairez, he's competitive all around, and I think that he's going to be out-volumed here, but ultimately, who's the more prepared athlete for this opportunity? I'd have to think Edgar Chairez. He's a big guy. He's a strong guy. He hits hard, and he's a dangerous finisher. So, yeah, I think if the fight goes to the distance, it's more than likely Van is going to get, the job done in terms of what he needs to do. But could he get screwed on the cards? Yeah, because he's fighting Edgar Chairez. Right. He's probably going to have the Mexican flag. He's probably going to be repping hard. So I just think tread lightly here. Guys coming around on 2-month turnaround when they're 22 years old off of getting knocked out bad. I don't really like that situationally at all, honestly. That knockout against Charles Johnson, guys, was the 13th of July. So it's going to be just over 2 months to get back in there. I don't like that. I do not like that. All right, guys. Last but not least, we got Raul Rosas Jr. taking on Arichi Lang, and this is what I'm going to leave you with. 2-minute drill, right? I think that Arichi Lang has a bad chin. I don't mean to disrespect the man, but if you look, Ayman Zahabi kind of caught his kick a little bit and threw a left hand, and I don't think Ayman expected it to hurt him, and it literally dropped him so bad. He then followed him to the ground and put him out bad with ground and pound. So this guy, Ayman Zahabi, hurt him, clipped him really, really bad. And Ayman's my boy. You guys know I have nothing but love and respect for Ayman. But I could say, frankly, I did not expect that outcome there. Then you see Jeff Molina dropped him twice badly. And the second time he dropped him, guys, I would reckon he was saved by the bell. It was at the end of round 2. Jeff Molina was on top, landing hard shots, and then the round ended. I think Jeff Molina could have finished the show there if he had a little bit more time to work. Cody Durden was able to wrestle him, put him through the paces as well. Daniel Marcos, I think, was well on his way to knocking this guy out when the fight was stopped. And I had a bet on Arichi Lang that night. So I'll tell you, I got bailed the hell out. Arichi Lang was getting his ass whooped in that fight. He's a good enough fighter. He's a talented enough guy. He's a tough enough guy. But frankly, I just think he's outskilled here. And I think he's up Schitt's Creek. If you look, Johnny Munoz Jr., he out-wrestled him. Jay Perrin easily out-wrestled him. Cody Durden out-wrestled him by a huge margin. So I don't know exactly what there is to love about this guy's game. He's got 8 wins by knockout. Unless he's able to go out there and replicate that, get another win by knockout, I think that he's going to get run up and done up. And honestly, I would not be surprised if Raul Rosas Jr. took him on the chin. He did that to Terrence Mitchell and everybody was surprised, but I'm telling you, I just did not see a chin that I would trust in Arichi Lang on the tape. And a lot of these guys can't really hurt him. Johnny Munoz, Jay Perrin, I don't think those guys can hurt him. I think Raul, if he wants to, can land some shots with the hands. But the thing about Raul is he doesn't throw many strikes. So if he takes it to the ground, you'd need him to belly him out, go for the ground and pound. He might just take the rear naked choke, but I think he's going to win. I think he's going to finish. I think he's going to make it look easy. So Raul Rosas Jr., that's the pick for me. That's everything, guys. We've got UFC 306. It's going down Saturday night. If you guys want to hear more from me, make sure you drop a like on this show. That's just to show a little love. Make sure you get subscribed to the channel. Make sure that you hit the bell, okay? Make sure you hit the bell for notifications because, guys, some people say to me, I missed the live show. I only saw the live show once. I never get in for these live streams. If you never want to miss a live stream, hit the bell for notifications. That's the easiest way to get notified each and every time that we go live. And that's all that I have for you guys right now. So if you guys are interested in more from me, you want all my thoughts, you want my thoughts on the props, you want my thoughts on everything like this, it's all posted right now on Patreon. There's going to be tons more coming on Patreon over the course of the week. I'm off to Nogi. I got to go train. God bless you all. Talk to you guys very soon. Peace, love, and chicken grease. Until next time, come back and we're having all the same fun again. Thanks, everybody.